Hello and welcome to a VectorTuts Quick Tip screencast. My name is Cheryl Graham. Today I'm going to show you how to make this fake mustache using custom art brushes that you create. First, we'll make a shape to use as the custom brush. Take the rounded rectangle tool and draw out a long, thin shape so that the sides are pretty much circles. Next, take the delete anchor tool and delete these points. There are actually 2 points on this end, so delete one of them. Next, take the Convert Anchor tool and click once to change the remaining point to a corner point. Now we're going to split this shape in two, so turn on Smart Guides and use the Line Segment tool to draw a horizontal line bisecting the shape. Go to the Pathfinder panel and click Divide. And now you can see that we have two shapes. Now select the top half with the Direct Selection tool, and I have a color group already set up here with various shades of brown. And I'm going to fill this top half with the lightest color, then fill the bottom half with the next darker color. I'll drag copy this object, then make a few more copies. I'll color the top half of the second object with the second darkest color, and the bottom half with the one after that, and so on, doing the same with the rest of the objects. I have one extra shape that I've filled with random browns, just for more variety. To make the brush, just drag the object into the Brushes panel. Choose Art Brush as the style, and now you can give the brush a name. I'll call this Hair 1, and then select Stretch to Fit here, and choose None as the colorization method because we already have assigned a color to it. Now repeat this process to create the rest of the brushes. Here are all my newly created brushes in the Brushes panel. Now I'll just take the Brush tool, and I have the first brush selected, and I'll paint a stroke. Double-click the brush tool to bring up its options. The fidelity setting refers to how closely the path will follow your mouse movement, or your pen, or whatever you're using. A lower setting will result in a more detailed path, so I'll set it a little higher. The smoothness does what it says, so I'll turn that all the way up. Under the Options section, you can choose to keep the brush stroke selected after you paint, and choose to edit a path if it's selected. So if I paint a new stroke, I can then paint over it to change it. These settings are a matter of personal preference. I like to uncheck the Keep Selected box, but keep the ability to edit the paths I select. With this slider, you can tell Illustrator how close you need to be to a selected path in order to edit it. Now let's start making the stash. First, I want some kind of guide, so I'm not just painting random strokes. So I'll draw out a rough shape for one side of the mustache. I can turn this shape into a guide by going to the View menu to Guides, Make Guides. If you don't see a guide, make sure you are showing the guides under this menu. I think I'll leave the guide on its own layer and create a new one above it. I'll change its name to Darks and choose a different layer color. Now select the darkest brush and start painting. This stroke is way too fat relative to my guide shape, so I'll just change it to half a point. Or actually a quarter point looks better. Now just paint several loose strokes. I've added a few medium brown strokes to the dark ones, and as with any vector path, you can move each stroke or modify it in any way for ultimate variety and flexibility. I'm going to make a new layer, and if you hold down the Option or Alt key and click on the new layer icon, it brings up the dialog box at the same time. I'll call this layer Medium, and then lock the dark layer and start painting with one of the lighter brushes. That's starting to look kind of bushy. I'll make a third layer and call it Highlights, then paint with the lightest brush. And I'll just skip ahead here, and you can see that it's getting pretty dense. If I zoom in, you can see how it looks like the strokes or hairs are interweaving. And that gives it a lot of depth and texture. I've created one more layer on top of the others, and have painted some darker brush strokes on the lower half of the overall shape. This gives it some more dimension and roundness. I'll hide the guide, and now do some tidying up of these loose brush strokes. I now have half a mustache. So select everything, then double-click on the Reflect tool. We want to flip this on the vertical axis, and then copy it. Now I'll just move the other half into place. Now we have a symmetrical mustache, and that just looks weird. So now you can set about making changes to the left side by changing the brush strokes to different colors, or moving them, adding more, or deleting some. You can also alter individual brush strokes by selecting them, then painting over them to edit, like I demonstrated earlier in the video. There's the finished mustache, and the last thing we'll do is add a shadow. I'll hide all but the first layer and then go up to View, Guides, Unlock Guides. Now select the guide and go back up to the Guides submenu and choose Release Guides. This turns the guide back into a regular vector object. I'm going to change its fill color to gray, and I'll just reflect and copy it like I did before. Then merge the two shapes in the Pathfinder panel, and then go up to the Effects menu and add a Gaussian blur. I'll enter about 15 in the radius and then adjust the position if necessary, and there you have your disguised mustache just in time for Halloween.